Commissioner of Customs, Preventive, versus MS Aafloat Textiles, 2009, 4 Scale 94. Introduction. The case of Commissioner of Customs, Preventive, versus MS Aafloat Textiles is an important Supreme Court judgment dealing with the nature of void agreements and void contracts. The court clarified the legal position regarding agreements that are void from the very beginning and emphasized that such agreements do not create any legal rights or obligations. This case is often cited while explaining the concept of void agreements under the Indian Contract Act, 1872. Facts of the case. In this case, MS Aafloat Textiles entered into certain transactions relating to import and export of goods. These transactions were found to be contrary to customs law. The Customs Department initiated proceedings and took action against the firm. MS Aafloat Textiles challenged the action of the customs authorities, claiming benefits arising from the transaction. The main issue before the court was whether any legal right could arise from a transaction or agreement that was void in the eyes of law. Issues before the court. Whether a transaction or agreement that is void from the very beginning, void ab initio, can create any legal or enforceable rights in favor of any party. Whether a party can claim benefits or protection under law on the basis of an agreement or transaction that is illegal or contrary to statutory provisions. Whether the customs authorities were justified in taking action against the respondent when the underlying transaction itself had no legal validity. Whether courts can recognize, enforce, or give effect to claims arising out of a void or unlawful agreement. These issues were examined by the Supreme Court in the context of the Indian Contract Act, 1872 and customs laws. Judgment of the court. The Supreme Court held that an agreement which is void ab initio, void from the beginning, has no legal existence. The court clearly stated that no rights, duties, or obligations can arise from a void agreement. Even if one party has acted upon such an agreement, the law will not enforce it. The court further observed that when a transaction is illegal or contrary to law, it cannot be validated merely because some acts have already been performed. The customs authorities were therefore right in taking action, and the respondent could not claim any protection or benefit under a void transaction. The Supreme Court rejected the arguments of MS Aafloat Textiles and upheld the action of the Customs Department. Legal principles laid down. An agreement which is void ab initio has no legal existence in the eyes of law. No rights, obligations, or liabilities can arise out of a void agreement. A transaction that is illegal or contrary to statutory provisions cannot be enforced by courts. Performance of a void agreement does not make it valid or enforceable. Courts will not assist or protect parties who base their claims on illegal or void transactions. Benefits or advantages claimed under a void agreement are not legally sustainable. Authorities are legally justified in taking action when the underlying transaction is void or unlawful. These principles reaffirm the provisions of the Indian Contract Act, 1872, especially relating to void agreements. Relation with Indian Contract Act, 1872. This judgment supports the provisions of the Indian Contract Act, especially Section 2, G, Section 23, Section 56. The case clearly distinguishes between void agreements and voidable agreements, emphasizing that void agreements are unenforceable from the start. This judgment strongly supports the provisions of the Indian Contract Act, 1872. It is in line with Section 2, G, which states that an agreement not enforceable by law is void. The court also applied the principle of Section 23, which declares agreements with unlawful object or unlawful consideration as void. Further, the judgment reflects Section 56, which provides that agreements to do impossible or unlawful acts are void. The case clearly explains that void agreements are unenforceable from the very beginning, and no legal rights can arise from them. It also helps in understanding the difference between void agreements and voidable agreements, by emphasizing that void agreements are invalid from the start, while voidable agreements are valid until avoided by the aggrieved party. Significance of the judgment. This judgment is significant because it reinforces the concept that law does not protect illegality, prevents parties from gaining advantages through unlawful transactions, acts as a guiding precedent in cases involving illegal contracts and customs violations, helps students understand the practical application of void agreements. The judgment is important because it clearly explains that a void agreement has no legal value from the very beginning. The Supreme Court made it clear that law does not support illegal or unlawful agreements, and no person can claim any benefit from such agreements. This judgment helps students understand that even if a void agreement is partly performed, it cannot become valid. It also confirms that courts will not help parties who are involved in illegal transactions. The decision gives strong support to government authorities, such as customs officials, to take lawful action when an agreement is void or against the law. Overall, this judgment strengthens the principles of the Indian Contract Act, 1872 and ensures fairness, legality, and public interest in contract law. Conclusion. The Supreme Court in Commissioner of Customs, Preventive, versus Aafloat Textiles firmly established that a void agreement has no legal standing and cannot be enforced under any circumstances. The judgment strengthens the rule that courts will not recognize or support agreements that are illegal or void. It is a landmark case for understanding the nature, effect, and consequences of void agreements under Indian contract law.